lot of awards, and it'd take a while if I list them all, but I do want to mention a few. He was a finalist twice for Pulitzer. He's won a Southeastern Regional Emmy. He's won several Mississippi Press Awards, and he was even honored by his University of Tennessee. It wasn't one of ours, but that's okay. Yeah, they gave him money. He got an Alumni Achievement Award from them, and we all know him. He's got cartoons that are syndicated and newspapers even around the world. We read him see him in the Clarion Ledger, and he's in the New York Times and USA Today and several other papers. So he's got a website. He's editor of, he's got it up here on the board, editor at large of Mississippi Today. So if you want to go read about him. He's got a radio show. My husband said he loved listening to his radio show. Now You're Talking, is that the title of it? I love that. And he also got a TV program, Conversations on Mississippi Public Broadcasting, written several books, even a children's book. And of course, it's wonderful cartoons that are very insightful and always just make you chuckle, and that's great to have a laugh. I was thinking about him last night and what to say, and I said, I wonder if he's got a Facebook page. I'm gonna look and see. And sure enough, he's got a great Facebook page. I mean, you really feel as if you get to know him personally on his Facebook page. You find out how he met his wife, how long he's been married. She's Amy. They've got 2 sons. And he said the one always had wanted a daughter. And he said this in front of somebody, and they said, well, it's your fault. She doesn't have a daughter. And he said, I didn't understand. Said, I did some reading, and I found out it was my fault. So to compensate, he has gotten her a little girl puppy. Well, I don't guess it's a puppy anymore. You've had Pip a while, and if you look at his Facebook page, you'll see a lot of pictures of Pip. And he gets up at 4:30 and walks. I was really impressed with that. And wonderful pictures of, he lives on a lake, and you see herons and egrets and deer and all kinds of beautiful sunrises. So take a look at his Facebook page if you have time. And after he talks, we've got books at the back that you can purchase. And I do want to mention also, I've got to do a little ad, that there are forms back there. If you have not joined Friends of the Library, we would love for you to join. Of course, this is free to everybody. Welcome to come every time, and it's fabulous that we've got such a great crowd here today. Thank you. I see some new faces, and we really appreciate that. So thank you for coming. Let's give it up for Marshall Ramsey.
Well, I'm glad we didn't have to postpone because it was supposed to rain frogs and do locusts next week. So it would have been I'm just glad to be here. You know, I had an old football coach that always used to say that. And I realize this because he played college football without a helmet, but he always used to say, I'm just glad to be here. And I've now gotten to that age where I'm like, yeah, I'm just glad to be here. And I'm just blown away at the crowd today. Thank you so much for coming out to hear me. And I hope you're not terribly disappointed by the end of it. But I appreciate, once again, and just a big shout out to Mississippi Today. I joined them 5 years ago, and I was at the Clarion Ledger for 22 years, full time for 15 or something like that. I lost track, but it was a good run. I really enjoyed it, and I wish them well. As you know, the media business has changed an awful lot in a very short amount of time, and I'm very proud of the team that I work with at Mississippi Today. They do some great journalism, and I'm very proud to be the editor at large. And guess what? Today, I'm actually living up to my title because I'm at large. I'm in Starkville. And I'm very glad to be in Starkville. I have many friends here. One of them in the back, David Garraway, just wanted to say a big shout out to him. One of my closest friends. And so anyway, it's good to be here and to be here with you. And so I'm not sure on the timing on this. I figure I'll go for about 30 minutes. We'll open up for a few questions because I know this is a very smart group. And I'm not, but y'all are. And I figure between the two of us, we can have some good questions and answers, and then we'll sign some books. How's that sound? Good. Let's get going. One of my favorite Mississippi State cartoons of all time is when Jack Crystal passed. And I think, a lot of people know me because of a lot of the obituary cartoons I do. And the way I look at it is, I can be a jerk for 300 days out of the year, and I can throw in a few nice cartoons. But obviously, Jack Crystal came from an era when the guys on the radio painted pictures with their words, and it was beautiful. I mean, we had John Ward at the University of Tennessee, Munson over at Georgia. I used to listen to him. And, you know, those guys were incredible. But Jack Crystal was really, honestly, the best and was fantastic. And I think what makes this cartoon truly work is the fact that Crystal has a cigarette in heaven. I just think that somehow worked. This is back, of course, the Mississippi State women's team when they were the SEC champs. This was them doing that. And then, of course, the baseball team has always given me very good cartoons. As you know, they get close a lot. And, you know, this is our state in Omaha, which I thought was pretty good. And then they finally came through and gave me something really cool to draw about. And, you know, but it's not always happy. And sometimes some of the things that go on, some of the stories are incredibly sad. And Mike Leach, obviously, that story was incredibly sad. You know, it's one of those things that Leach was, I want to be Mike Leach when I grow up, to be honest with you. He honestly, I think, was just intellectually curious about everything. And I don't think we truly realized what we had until he was gone, kind of deal. And you know, I mean, but that said, when he had the heart attack, and I knew that it was incredibly serious, and he of course passed. And this was the cartoon that I did, the initial cartoon, and they did run this on the front of the alumni magazine, which I was very touched that they did that. But once again, this was the cartoon that I think caught his spirit. There isn't a Bigfoot up here, is there? They serve candy corn in the other place, don't they? And I agree with Mike Leach on that. I cannot stand candy corn. It is garbage. I just cannot. So there are no chairs in heaven, right? And what about aliens? And my raccoon Bilbo Baggins is here. And so anyway, all dogs go to heaven. So I have like I said, a lot of friends. Some of y'all know Sid Salter. I just want to throw that. I sat next to Sid for 15 years. And so I got to know him not only as a journalist, but as a human being. And I always love him. I probably annoy him a lot now just because he now is in a different capacity than what he used to be, but he's still one of the finest people I know, and I love dropping him. This is just a proof that we used to hang out with some really despicable human beings there a little bit. So you got to be careful about who you hang with. And you know, it's funny. Two of those politicians really are cool with the fact that I draw cartoons, and one of them completely hates my guts, and I'm not going to tell you which one it is. Okay, how I got to Mississippi. I was a cartoonist in high school. My teacher said you can't write, so she made me the cartoonist at the student newspaper. That's how I literally became the cartoonist. And so I started doing that. I realized I loved it. My very first cartoon got me sent to the principal's office, and I said, I am onto something here. And so I went to the University of Tennessee, and some of you groaned, but Mississippi State didn't give me any money. Or I've been here. I just thought it was about green. It wasn't about orange or maroon. But anyway, this is my, that was me in college. I have not changed a bit. So when I'm in college, I had a professor who was incredible. Her name was Dr. Faye Julian. And Dr. Julian, it was my senior year, my second senior year, long story. And so Knoxville was one of those incredibly, like today, except it's colder, all winter long. It's just very gray and very ugh. And so the first sunny day, the first thing you want to do is be out by the lake or do something else. And so, but her class, she would not let you miss. And so, okay, it was a speech class, and you're going to decide by the end of this whether or not I learned anything, I know, but I would go in there, and I remember the first time we had a test, Faye passes them out, and I'm looking at all the people around me, and they're getting 60s and 70s, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm dreading this. She puts mine down in front of me, and I look at it, and I get a little smirk on my face, 95. And Faye looks at me, and she says, you can do better than that. And I just look at her and I was like, you old bat, what are you talking about? See, Faye, number one, her husband was the band director, Dr. J. Julian. Faye actually knew my dad in college, so I mean, she was of the same generation, but she saw something in me before I saw something in me. And she looked at me and she said, I've seen how talented you are. I know that you can do great things. You can do better than that. And I just felt my spine stiffen. Now I do it because I have titanium back there, but back then it was like, whoa, and I did better. And a few weeks later, I went into the cafeteria down at the basketball arena, and there was Pat Summitt, the legendary basketball coach. She called me over, and she looked at me and she said, who are you? And I said, well, I'm Marshall, I'm a college student here. And she said, oh, I kind of figured that, I guess. But she said, what do you do? And I said, well, I draw cartoons for the student newspaper. And she said, oh, I really liked your cartoons on our national championships. I went, well, thank you. She said, do you want to become a cartoonist? And I said, yes, ma'am. She said, what are you gonna sacrifice to achieve it? That was the kind of people I kept running into in college. And I kept running into all these people that dared me to be better than I was. And it worked out real well. Faye would always come every time I spoke on the University of Tennessee's campus and would grade me on my speech. She'd sit back in the back of the room and she's like, well, you're getting a little better. Thanks, Faye. That was the last time I got to see, this was the last time I got to see her right here. She was handing me, I'm sorry I got a little bit behind on my slide. I got to draw her in a drawing, and she had dementia there. And I said, Faye, I felt weird calling her Faye. It's always Dr. Julian, but I said, Faye, I just want to let you know that you were my favorite professor, and I know I was your favorite student. She said, you weren't. Thank you, Faye. As much as it hurts, would you please tell me who your favorite student was? And she said, Peyton Manning. So I looked at her and I said, okay. And so, as you can probably tell there, I illustrated, there's a hotel chain called the Graduate Hotels. In Knoxville, I did 50 pieces of artwork, as you can see behind Mr. Manning, because Mr. Manning is an investor there, and he requested me to do the illustrations. So that's how I ended up getting. He was familiar with my work. So I met him, and I just said, hey, Peyton, I'm a fan, but I don't like you. And he said, why? And I said, because you stole Faye from me. And he went, Faye Julian? Oh, I was her favorite student. Jerk. This is my other mentor. This is Charlie Daniel, who's the cartoonist in Knoxville. He is 94 years old, and I will call him on the way home and talk to him. He's just fantastic. He got laid off at age 90 from the Knoxville paper. So he's fantastic. Basically, he took me to cartoonist conventions, and he let me fill in for him. And here's the thing, and this is something I keep in the back of my mind. Whenever somebody hands me a wonderful book, a children's book, for instance, or whatever, if there's a way I can help that person, then I will, because somebody helped me along the way. Recently I did a wildfire series with these two artists. One of them is a graphic artist who actually does a lot of mascots for football teams. He's a very talented guy. And the other one is Paige Braddock, who is from Macomb, Mississippi, by the way. She did go to the University of Tennessee also, and she is in charge of Schultz Enterprises, which may not ring a bell, but that's basically the company that does Peanuts. So she's in charge of Snoopy. So, and this was the work. So basically I researched it and did that, and so it's great. So I did eventually graduate. Did not go work for the New York Times. I ended up working at Pope High School in Marietta, Georgia. My dad was so proud. I was at Custodian 1, and I don't want you thinking for a minute that Custodian 1 was the best kind of custodian, because I was actually Custodian 2. No, I was actually on the bottom of the totem pole. This was my dad's reaction to it. He was quite stunned. He was a vegetarian back then. And my attitude was terrible at that point, so I literally was walking around pushing a barrel with the Xerox of my diploma on it. No Tennessee jokes, okay? Because that's very obviously an open for a Tennessee joke. But so about 6 months into it, I was like flatulence in an elevator. People didn't want to be around me, but they couldn't get away from me. They saw me coming, and they were kind of like disappear into the doorway. I went to church, highly recommend it, do it a couple times a year, whether I need to or not. And, no, just kidding, we go more often. And the preacher was talking about the parable of the talents. And I realized at that point that I was the servant who was bearing my talent. Because I was afraid. Because I was afraid I was no good. I was afraid I'd failed. So I literally came in with a great attitude the next Monday, and they drug tested me right away because they did not know what I was doing. So, here's a cup. As soon as my attitude changed, doors started opening. One day, a lady came up to me and she said, "Hey, my friend is the managing editor of the advertising department for the Marietta Daily Journal, and you're very talented, and I've told him about you, and he would like to want you to come in for an interview." And 3 months later, I left. I ended up going to work for Marietta Daily Journal, taking a cut in pay with less benefits, but it was worth it. I wasn't cleaning up toilets. Also, I worked with a lady named Maggie. I like Maggie. Maggie was old. She was 45. I thought she was old. I can't remember 45. Maggie was 45. She had never had to work because her husband had been first an Air Force pilot in Vietnam and then flew for Eastern Airlines. So as you can imagine, they made a good income. So she stayed at home, she raised the kids. Until Eastern Airlines, the pilots went out on strike. Ron lost his job, they lost their income, they lost everything. The roof was leaking in their house, it was falling apart. And Maggie, who never had, well, she'd worked. She grew up in a florist with her parents, so she knew how to work. But she went to go work at the local high school as a custodian so that the family could have health insurance and so that they could figure out how to keep their daughter in college and how they could keep going. And so I liked her. She had a great attitude, and she really helped me have a better attitude. One day, Maggie came up to me and she said, "Hey, Marshall, I really like you. You're nice. How'd you like to go out with my daughter?" And I said, "Your standards for your daughter are incredibly low. I am not going to be a doctor." She said, "Well, she just broke up with her boyfriend," which, by the way, was a lie. They were seeing other people. I found this out about 25 years later. But I tell you that because, and a lot of times, right now, if you watch the news, it seems pretty dire, right? You see, "Oh, this is terrible." And at the time, I thought, well, that was the worst thing that could ever happen to me. That was the best thing that ever happened to me being a high school custodian. It was great. Because I could basically clean up this room when this thing's over. I've got skills now, right? In fact, I could wax the floor. I know how to do that too. But also, this is one of my Pope shirts right here, which I really like. I did shirts and all kinds of stuff for them. I'm mad too. But I've been married to her daughter for 30 years. Yeah, because I always love telling that story short. What I do is I say, "Hey, I met my wife when I was a high school janitor." And that makes me sound really creepy. Yes. Yeah, I had a car. Never mind. So anyway, the University of Tennessee now, they claim me. I'm next to Paul Feinbaum, which if you're going to have your picture next to anybody, have it next to Paul Feinbaum. It just makes you look really handsome. No offense, Paul. One project I am about to start on, I'm very proud of, and I just thought I'd tell y'all, is, and we're in the final stages of getting it started, is that Mac McAnally, the incredibly gifted, talented singer-songwriter, CMA Musician of the Year 10 times in a row from Belmont, Mississippi, is coming out with a lyrics book. And I'm very happy for him because I'm a big fan. I used to listen to the song "It's My Job" when I was a janitor. And now that I've gotten to meet Mac, that's really cool. And even better is that I will be illustrating the book. So that's one of the drawings right there. That's actually downtown Belmont, for those of you who've been there. So there's Mac there. So, Mac's got great hair. I'm envious. This is great. I'll just show you. The puzzle thing, my sister gave this to me one year, and I was like, "You're incredibly cheap because that cost you $2. But the only way you can solve that puzzle is to go backwards." And that's kind of been my thing on how I would do my career. And so my wife and I got married. We moved to Houston, Texas, to Conroe, Texas, and then we moved to San Diego, California. And one day I got a call from my editor in Conroe. He said, "Hey, I just went to the Clarion Ledger and the cartoonist quit. How would you like to move to Mississippi?" My first thought was, I've seen Mississippi in the movies, no thank you very much, because I had just gotten back from the beach. It was very nice, and it was a pretty day. But he kept after me like Sam I Am. It kind of was in the cards, literally. These are tickets my grandfather had from 32. Yeah, 1932, when Tennessee beat Ole Miss. So, I mean, that was like, okay, that's a sign that I'm going to go to Mississippi. Didn't realize it. Anyway, that's my first cartoon. That was the very first one. And so since then, I have done about 7,000 cartoons. And if I'd made that big a mess then, they would have fired me. If I did it now, they wouldn't notice. They have no idea. Then they made me a columnist, which was really hilarious. Cartoonist Ramsey debuts weekly column. It's like, yeah, it's like columnist debuts weekly cartoon. It's like, okay, this is weird. So, but it worked out fine. It was fun. So these are my favorite cartoons and why. This is obviously 9/11, and this was drawn in between the two towers falling. So that was very powerful. And you think about the silver lining on that, we didn't really mean it, but the first responders and the fact that just for a short amount of time in this country, we kind of came together. I hope we can do it again someday, and not under those circumstances. Hurricane Katrina, once again, these were all Pulitzer nominated, so, which is a really, okay, tell you a true story. My dad, I love my dad. You would love my dad too. He's not with us anymore. Dad's name was Dave Ramsey. Yeah, the one that you're thinking of was named after my dad. He's my first cousin. Yeah, the one on the radio. I got the money, I got the hair, he got the money. That's how that worked out. But anyway, my dad and I are sitting in Neyland Stadium. Dad graduated from there in '59, and I graduated in '91. And we're sitting there watching a Tennessee game, and I'd just been named a Pulitzer Finalist for the second time. And Dad and I are just sitting there, and I'm all cocky, and I'm like, I bet I'm the only two-time Pulitzer finalist in this whole stadium. And my dad said, and I'm the only other person who cares. Thanks, Dad. I appreciate that. This is Burt Case and Kirk Fordyce. I mean, I started with Kirk Fordyce. And it literally has gone downhill. You're just not going to get a better governor to draw about than Kirk. And if you didn't know Kirk, I'm sorry. He was a force of nature. It was like, he used to walk past my window with a gun on his hip, walking his dog, and I put a sign in my window because I was doing these cartoons, right? So I put the sign up in my window, and I pointed arrow toward my boss's office, and I said, Marshall Ramsey's office that way. My boss was not happy when he saw that. Yeah, this is just proof that it actually did happen. So it was kind of nice. It was good. I missed by one vote on the second one, which that'll bother me for the rest of my life. So just let you know. The governors, once again, Fordyce was fantastic. This is pre-Beret. This is him and Mike Moore. For those of you, Mike Moore and him they loved each other. They just didn't know it. And here's when the Beret made its debut. President Clinton. Oh, those were the days. What the things that we draw about now. Tuck, Chuck, Puck, and a lame duck. Amy Tuck. And she's not here today, but she's in Starkville somewhere, I'm sure. And this is when Fordyce passed. Somebody called me up and they said, that was rude. And I said, no, it was accurate. Then I had Musgrove. I found someone over at the Capitol who's interested in my ideas about the state budget. So actually, I want your sandwich. And then when the Nissan plant came and he ran for governor, he was, about every other word was Nissan, so I had him getting the tattoo. Haley, I couldn't draw Haley Barbour at first to save my life. Until one day my son was watching the Flintstones and I realized Haley looked like Fred Flintstone. And once I got that, boom, there you go. So this is one of my favorites. I put the legislature in, I pull the legislature out, I put the legislature in, and I shake it all about. That fourth frame caused me to go into therapy, just to let you know. That was hard to draw. So. Marcia and I want to thank you for voting me New Hampshire. And the translator says, he says, hi guys. I so wanted Haley to run for president. That would have been amazing. It would have been great. Phil Bryant does not like how I draw him, so and the thing he doesn't like, and this will crack you up, he doesn't like the wrinkles. Wrinkles are where the smiles have been, remember? So I'm good with it. I'm just still glad I'm vertical. But anyway, so yeah, that's my Phil caricature. And then we have the current one. This is an old one, but I think this is 50 Shades of Vanilla. And you must be this popular to be reelected. I don't think he likes me either. So Mark Jackson needs me. So it's a tater tot for this signal. Yeah. And you notice I cheated. I was not about to draw a tater tot. I love him not, I love him, I love him not, I love him, I love him not. But I just want to let you know, there was a time when he and I were good, and this is back then, so just to let you know. We're both showing off our incredible lack of a chin there. We could be brothers from another mother. No. Legislature's always been good. We had the beef plan a few years ago. It's producing. Yeah. And then we had Charlie Capps and Jackie Gordon back in the day, which were so much fun. Then they said, if the government said if you make a fallout, this is after 9/11, you can make a fallout shelter with duct tape and plastic. And I was like, we've been doing that for years in Mississippi. And then we had the love between Delbert and Philip Gunn, Duty Head. Just a few. The letter Loretta Lynn, when the Queen of England died, said I was queen of a country and I was the queen of country. Yeah, the TANF scandal, so that's fun. Down in Southern Miss. And of course Jackson, Christmas, Easter, Jackson, the garbage man came. Small miracles. And then the mayor and the governor get along, so speed dating. And if you've ever been through Jackson going toward the coast, they worked on Highway 29. Yeah. Stop messing with them, it says. All right, changes. Like I said, I did not ask for the newspaper business to change like it did. And editorial cartoonists, when I started, there was about 200. There's maybe 8 left. And so I'm a dinosaur, walking, and it's pretty awesome. Best thing ever happened to me was in 2010. The Clarion Ledger was very kind, and they made me part-time, which freed up half my day and got rid of half my income. And so that allowed me to try new things, and so that was really fun. And that's from illustrations and so forth. This was the day that it happened, actually. I got back from the Marine Corps Marathon, and they called me in, and they said, we're making you part-time. And I just started laughing, and they're like, why are you laughing? I said, this is going to be the best thing that ever happened to me. And it has been. It's been great. Thank you, Clarion Ledger. I appreciate that. I'm never a moment of sadness. But I ended up doing radio, which was scary for everybody listening. I was on Super Talk. That'll give you a brain freeze. The fact that I was on Super Talk and now I'm on MPB. There you go. That's called versatility. I judged the Pretty Cow contest. I wrote a book, Fried Chicken and Wine, which I need more of those. That's my best book. I like that one. But the Chainsaws and Casseroles. I gave TED Talks. I hung out with famous people. It's not easy being green, but it was pretty cool. Doing a little bit of speaking. I get to hang out with Maggie Wade, which, that's cool. I got to play harmonica in a band, and I interview people. See, here's the thing. I changed on my thing a long time ago from being a cartoonist, because I am a cartoonist. That's what brought me to the dance. But I like to think I'm a storyteller now. And I live in easily the best place in the United States to tell stories, because we have so many great ones. I asked Mac McAnally that question. It's kind of a chicken or an egg question. Do we have great storytellers here or just great stories? And he said both. And I said, you could be elected with an answer like that. That's very good. But it's true. And I moved here for 2 years. I thought, because the way the newspaper business worked was I would get a promotion after everybody saw how wonderful I was, and I'd move up to a bigger paper and I'd make a lot of money. Well, like I said, the newspaper business just kind of went, at least for editorial cartoonists. And so then one day I realized, my kids are happy in school. And then one day I realized, I like it here. And then one day I realized, I've gained 40 pounds because the food's so good. And then, so the bottom line is, I've been very blessed to be here. And I come to something like this and I see this many people care about my work, and I'm so humbled. And thank you, I appreciate that. Once again, the radio show every Monday, which is fun. I have a new producer now. I like her, except that she went to Alabama, and I have been enjoying her sadness about Nick Saban leaving way too much. And so we have gotten off on a rocky start because I have like, oh, has your soul entered the portal yet? Are you sad? Did conversations, and that was fun. So I got to hang out with some really cool, Jessamine Ward, 2-time National Book Award winner. Not many people have done that. Only 2, I think, on top of her. And David Sheffield, and just, you may not recognize that name, but if you ever watched Eddie Murphy in Coming in America or the James Brown Hot Tub, he's the one who wrote it. And guess where he lives? Hattiesburg. That's the beauty of Mississippi right there. People always ask me, why don't you move? I said, well, there's some people like me to, but you can't bump into people like that anywhere else but here. I mean, it's just incredible, the people that you get to meet. This is Pip, by the way. She is my muse. She unfortunately has Cushing's and diabetes, and now she's lost her sight because she has cataracts. It's about $5,000 for that, so I am working on a children's book. Hopefully I can get enough to get that money to give her sight back, because she is bumping into everything in the house, and it's quite bad. This is, they filmed a show called Handcrafted Hotels. It's on, I think it was on Discovery Plus, on one of the streaming services, about the graduate hotels. And so they filmed her, and she was a complete diva that day. She would not walk the direction they wanted to. She stuck her tongue out at the cameraman. She was incredible. But she also has won an Emmy. And that is where she won the Emmy Awards, right there, so, in cartoon form. She's like, yeah, you said tree, right? That's what that is right there. So that's kind of opened me up into painting now, so I do a little bit of painting. And that's Stucky Bridge, which I actually got a concussion because I hit my head on a steel beam on that one. That's why I'm so creative. The Vicksburg bridges, the Delta, the coast, and the airplanes are coming up next. There's the Capitol. So then I started doing airplanes because I liked drawing airplanes as a kid. So I started painting those. And what happened was a friend of mine, well, there's a friend of mine now, but they were at the Mississippi Book Festival, and I was moderating a panel on the air war in World War II. And so guess what? I'm a middle-aged dad. Guess what? You either go into barbecue when you hit 30 or you go into World War II, right? So I went into World War II, which I'd always liked as a kid anyway. So I started painting all these different, things. And so I painted that one right there, the B-29s over Tokyo, because a friend of mine who's on the panel had written a book about it. So, and he and I are going to we're pitching it right now to his agent who just likes it. We're going to do a graphic novel based on his book that was a Pulitzer finalist. And there's with Masters in the Air coming out this week on Apple Plus about World War II, about the 8th Air Force over Europe. And this was Lucky Luckadoo's B-17. So just to kind of show you some of my stuff. That would be for the graphic novel, which would be, that's it right there. That'd be nice. Because I still have 2 kids in college. Actually, one out, come to think of it. I only have one in college, but I'll soon have another. These are just more illustrations. People always ask, how do you do the ideas? We're about ready to do questions and answers. People always say, where do you get your ideas from? Reading, number one, is, they say reading is fundamental, but it really, for coming up with ideas, because it obviously makes your brain work a lot harder than watching television or doom scrolling Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. But reading, I read the news and then I pay attention. And sometimes ideas just flash into my head and I draw them. That's easy, right? A classic example of that was the Barbara Bush cartoon. And I'll tell that story real quick and then we'll go into questions. This one, literally, I just talked to my priest and I said, I realized I had bothered him on a Saturday night, and I was like, oh wow, even priests don't get a day off. And that was, then my thought was, who comforts the comforters? And then boom, that idea hit me and I drew it. So that's that. So, cancer survivor, I was very fortunate that 3 doctors missed my melanoma and my plastic surgeon caught it, so I'm still here. So I do a lot of cancer work. And these are just more drawings of buildings and stuff and so forth. I'm trying to get to the Barbara Bush stuff. Yeah, okay, so I'll tell this story real quick. We'll do questions and then we'll sell books. When Barbara Bush was ill, they said they're going to take her off of support and make her comfortable. My mom had just passed away from COPD, and I knew she had COPD, so I knew what that meant. So I started thinking about her life, and I thought, here's a woman who had everything. She had wealth, fame, platform, husband was a president, son was a president, son was a governor, her granddaughter's on the Today Show. She had everything. And my first thought was, well, she had this big, bold, bombastic personality, so she obviously stormed through the gates of heaven, you know. No, she had also lost a child. See, Barbara and George Bush lost their daughter Robin in the 1950s from leukemia. And as you can imagine, there really wasn't a cure back then. There's one now, but it's very difficult even today on the kids. And they fought, and they used every resource they could find to keep that little girl alive, and she didn't. And so this was my initial sketch, was her being greeted by her mother. Now, I haven't been to heaven, and a lot of people say I'll never get there, but I always wonder, would she recognize her with the white? I don't know. I just hope heaven isn't cold white clouds. That would be really terrible. But anyway, so this was the cartoon I did, and I didn't think anything else of it. I put it out into the universe, and this is what came back. Jenna posted it on her Instagram. And Jenna had posted, someone sent this to me. I don't know the artist, but I love her. Michigans. For 2 hours, I was a female. And my wife was thrilled. So I now understand what you women go through. It was a great thing. But anyway, this thing had gone viral at this point. The family loved it. Here's Jeb Bush Jr., who I didn't even know existed, talking about low energy. So anyway, they loved it. Then I get a call from the Today Show, and they said, Marshall, we'd like to use your work on our platforms, which is a very fancy way of saying we'd like to use your work for free. I was like, okay. So the next morning, Amy teaches, so she has to be out of the house by 7, but she was running late, and she called, and anyway, we're sitting there, this comes on, so we're watching it, and at the very end, boom, they show my cartoon, and then it got weird. My phone starts going off. I start hearing from like ex-girlfriends I had restraining orders against. Savannah Guthrie's like, oh, that Marshall Ramsey's the sweetest, most wonderful man. And my wife's like going, that's the biggest crock I've ever heard in my life. And then, Hoda's like, oh, I love Marshall. And Kathy Lee Giffords with a glass of wine, I like Marshall Ramsey. It was the most out-of-body, weird experience ever. And Jenna nails it right here. This image is such a comfort. It depicts what we know to be true. What I did not know was that the moment I thought about this situation with their daughter, George W. was on his knees talking to his mother about Robin. We lined it up on the timing on this. So it was a God moment, right? So anyway, it got crazy. I'll go through this real quick. I got Savannah Guthrie and Brett Baer to agree on something, so I got NBC and Fox to agree on something. Nobel Peace Prize. Thank you very much. My university found me. They thought I had money. They were wrong. But then I started hearing from parents who'd lost children. And it wasn't, hey, Marshall, thanks to the cartoon, it gave me hope. It was, Marshall, the cartoon gave me hope. Now let me tell you about my child. Over 1,000 people reached out to me. Emails, letters, phone calls, texts, Kroger. You name it, somebody stopped me to talk about it. And it was great. And I made so many copies of the cartoon and gave it to people. And so here's the thing, and this is the thing I'm gonna leave to you before, and this is, by the way, this was George W. Bush's, H.W. Bush's cartoon. Amy woke me up like at 11 o'clock, said George Bush died, and I'm like, he's not old. And I was like, no, the dad. And he's like, oh, he's never gonna die. And so I got a call from CNN, and they wanted me to be on their show, and they said, we're going to send a driver. And I'm like, I live in Jackson. I don't really need a driver. I might hit a deer. That's about the. They're like, oh no. So anyway, I'm sitting out there at 4:30 in the morning, and a stretched SUV pulls up. It was like the end of Pretty Woman, except without the prostitution. Much more family friendly. And this guy gets out right here. This really cool dude. He's a photographer, and he was driving that. And he opens the door, and he said, Mr. Ramsey, is there anything else I can do for you? And I said, yeah. Hit the horn. My neighbors have got to see this. They're not going to believe this. 4:30 in the morning. This is wasted. There you go. So that was crazy. And so I ended up on CNN for 8.5 minutes, which on network television, and you just have a little thing in your ear. There's no monitor. And I knew it was John Berman, but I couldn't see him. As you can tell, I pretty much wear the same clothes all the time. I just opened my closet, blue jackets, white shirts, tan pants. And, oh, wait a minute, you don't believe me? There you go. Just to let you know. Because there's something my wife and I figured out very early on in our marriage, that I'm not capable of dressing myself. So we make it simple. Now, I got a call. I was driving down the highway down 55, and I got a call from the president, I think, of Junior League of Jackson, which I've always said if they ran state government, we'd be #1 in everything and have cut flowers in the bathrooms. I mean, they get things done. And they were inviting Jenna Bush Hager to come to Mississippi to be their speaker. And they said, and you are going to be our present to her. And I said, you better get some flowers and chocolates, because that ain't enough. And the whole idea was I'm supposed to literally stand there. So she's being interviewed for 45 minutes to an hour, and then I'm supposed to do this. And she's supposed to turn around and go, oh, there's Marshall Ramsey. Well, my thought was I was going to go, and she's going to turn around and go, who's that? So I do. Something goes terribly wrong. The interview's way short. I jump out. She turns around, boom, just starts crying like it's been raining outside for the last 2 days. And I'm in a room with 1,000 women. And my wife's laughing. She knows I'm about to die. And Jenna turns around and looks at me and she says, come here. And she hugs me and she says, you mean so much to our family. And she makes me sit down and we talk like we're old friends, and it was crazy. So you never know where one piece of work will bring you. And you never know that the impact of something that you do on any given day, because we're all artists, and you can probably be thinking to yourself, I can't draw a stick shift. By the way, my boss's journalism teacher sitting right on the front row. You got me serious points today. Thank you very much. So I might even get a raise because I got such a picture. You never know how you can make a difference in somebody's life. And I've drawn 7,000 cartoons, and I've had 2 cartoons that have made a difference, and I'm very proud of both of them. All right. Oh, by the way, I wasn't kidding about Dave Ramsey, by the way. That's him, and that's the real one right there. So, all right. So, and by the way, he loved to water ski. That's him at 78 water skiing. So. All right. Open the floor for questions, since I've gone on too long. No, that's fine. That's fine. Yes, way back in, you're about at Highway 82 now. Yes.
Just about. How's your cousin Dave doing now?
I sent him an email yesterday because Dan Miller, who was one of his friends, died, and I just said, how you doing? He had a really bad couple of years. He did some weird stuff, but I think he's doing all right. He's making a lot of money, and it's good. I talk to him about once every 3 months or so.
Yeah.
He's 8 years older than I am, so, I always was the obnoxious little cousin. Yes?
Have you ever met any presidents?
I have. I met George H.W. Bush, which is kind of ironic. Yeah, I met him in college, and I met Clinton one time. Met Bill Clinton. Yeah, when we lived in San Diego, we would get invited to parties because we were Southern, and we said exotic things like kudzu. They love that in California. And so one day they came in, they were like, dude, you sound like Bill Clinton, dude. I'm like, no, and then Clinton was in office in the restaurant. No, I don't sound like Bill Clinton. They're like, dude, we have shrimp. And I'd be like, I'm sorry, Hillary, I lied. I didn't mean to. And they'd flick me a shrimp like I was Shamu. It was incredible. It was good stuff. Like I said, in San Diego, Amy and I would literally drive 15 miles to the north of San Diego to a Popeyes once a month to eat chicken just so that our hearts wouldn't stop. Because we were afraid without that grease we wouldn't be able to. Yes?
Now that everything is digital, do you still draw your cartoons by hand, or do you do it on the computer?
Good question. I do draw them by hand on my computer. I switched when I went to Mississippi today. I now draw on an iPad, which is out in my car. I do use a program called Procreate, and the paintings that you see, I also do on Procreate as well. It's a very, very functional program. You can also do some simple animation with it as well. So it's a lot of fun. I still do hand drawings, And it's really weird because I get anxiety now because I'm gonna mess up. I don't have an undo button, so so I intentionally keep a sketchbook and do pen and ink drawings so I don't forget how. Yes, ma'am.
Are you worried about AI?
Am I worried about AI? Yes and no. I noticed, and I'm gonna bring up a topic that's divisive. The former president posted a picture of himself praying in church, and it was obviously AI created. It may have should have been a courtroom, but no, I'm not gonna. But he had 6 fingers. He had 6 fingers in the picture, and I'm thinking AI's not quite there yet. But I am saying, everybody's like, well, you could just do your cartoons with AI. I'm like, no, because I think, but here's the thing, and I think AI just is a tool, right? Like every other digital tool, it's a tool. And what you need to do, and I tell this to young artists, you need to create a brand. You need to make people want your work for whatever reason, but there's more things than just the actual artwork that you put down on the paper on that. So on the branding part of it. And that's why I'm glad that my dad suggested I get a marketing degree. It worked out very well. So, yes?
What about Carter? Did you draw a lot of Carter cartoons?
Yeah, Carter was, I didn't do a lot of Carter cartoons. Carter was president, I grew up in Georgia, so, but that's what got me interested in wanting to, when I was 8, I told my dad I wanted to be an editorial cartoonist. And, which was the weirdest thing an 8-year-old could possibly tell his father. I mean, I think Dad was disappointed, but Dad's answer was, and you'll be the best one ever. Yeah, good answer, Dave Ramsey. Much better than, oh, I'm the only person who cares. But that said, Dad came up to me after the first time he heard me speak, and he said, this was like in Millsap's Arts and Lecture Series in Jackson. He came up to me, he and Mom came, and Mom was an art teacher too. I come by this with some degree of, not having to work for it, but very lucky to have the parents I had. But Dad came up to me afterwards and he said, you're the only person I ever knew that knew what he wanted to do at 8. So there you go. But when I was a kid, they made us sit around the dining room table at night. My older sisters are much smarter than I am. And I'm not knocking myself. They're just incredibly smart people. And so we would talk about politics. And one of them was obviously Watergate and Nixon and Ford and then the end of Vietnam. And I mean, this was real stuff to me as a kid. And then guess what? The governor of my home state was running for president. And so I went to Plains and everything else. And so it was, it kind of lit the butt. So I got to hear Carter speak. I didn't get to meet him, but I was at the Carter Center. And I kind of felt like that, yeah, well, you're the reason why I do what I do. And so I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, Carter had the big teeth, Yeah. All right. Yeah.
How widely syndicated is your work?
Yeah, my national stuff goes out through creators, and I don't even know how big the package is. It used to go out to 450. It's probably shrunk just because the number of papers have died down on that. But that's only a few cartoons a month. But still, I mean, that's always been nice. I've been syndicated since I was 25. So I was a janitor at 23, and I was syndicated in the New York Times at 25. It was a pretty quick ascension once I got out of my own way. So that was kind of cool. And I love a newspaper. I love to smell print. I'm old, in that sense, but I just love that. And I love it being laid out and organized and everything else. And so, oh, thank you. Don't let me end like that.
I'm just going to say that one of your cartoons that I most remember is another sort of sentimental one, like Bush, Zacharias and Pirate.
Yes.
He's pinned a cartoon where he's kind of walking over the field at sunset, and Bully's trading along, and he tells him he has to go back.
Yeah. I did do that one too. Yeah. Yeah.
And Queen Elizabeth with the guards on each side.
That's right. Yeah, my editor at the time, because one of the angels looked sad, and he said, "There are no tears in heaven." I said, "Have you been?" He said, "Why?" Oh, okay, never mind. I don't even want to get into my church background because that would. My first name is Thomas, okay, so that causes all kinds of issues. Yeah, my parents named me my middle name. That's always been a real treat. Any other questions? Y'all are great. Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for having me to Starkville. This is so good. And we do have books. If I think I have enough. I do have another box in the car, so life is good. So don't fear that. And I do take all forms of payment, for the most part. I've got this little doodad that does great.